Just when people thought the tension between 50 Cent and the T.I. camp couldn't get any messier, the story just took a wild and unexpected turn. And this time, the voice stepping into the chaos isn't who most people expected. Out of nowhere, T.I. Kemp jumped into the middle of the drama with a message that sounded less like gossip and more like a warning. Not just to King Harris, but to the entire Harris family. And the message was crystal clear: leave 50 Cent alone. According to Tia, a lot of these artists are making a huge mistake by trying to provoke 50 right now. While others are still focused on music charts and viral moments, she says 50 Cent has already moved far beyond that world. Music may have made him famous, but today he's operating on an entirely different level, building empires in film, television, and business. So when people start throwing shots at him for headlines or album promotion, Tia claims it's a dangerous game. Because if there's one thing everyone in the industry knows about 50 Cent, it's this: he doesn't forget, and he doesn't play fair when it comes to revenge. Meanwhile, King Harris has been digging up old receipts, bringing up past allegations, and even dragging decades-old stories back into the spotlight. For some fans, it looks like he's trying to prove a point. For others, it feels like he might be stepping into a battle he doesn't fully understand. And here's where things get even more interesting. Because Tia Kemp isn't just some random commentator. Old interviews, photos, and stories are resurfacing online showing she once had real ties to 50 Cent during the chaotic years of his war with Rick Ross. Which raises a serious question people online are starting to ask. Is Tia Kemp really trying to protect King Harris from a disaster waiting to happen? Or does she know something about 50 Cent that the rest of the internet is only beginning to realize? The question hanging over this entire situation right now is simple: why would Tia Kemp step in at all? Because if you've been watching how this drama has been unfolding online, it didn't start with her. The spotlight was already heating up after King Harris started throwing some serious shade toward 50 Cent. And let's be honest, when someone decides to poke at 50 publicly, that almost never stays small for long. King has been moving like he has something to prove lately. Over the past few weeks, he's been digging through old stories, resurfacing controversial moments from the past, and even bringing up accusations that have followed 50 Cent for years. Some fans think he's simply defending his family name. Others believe he's trying to step out of his father's shadow and make his own headlines. But the internet noticed something else too. The way King has been approaching this situation feels a lot more aggressive than people expected. Instead of letting things cool down, he keeps pushing the conversation further. More comments, more responses, more reminders of old drama. And that's exactly why Tia Kemp suddenly stepping in caught everyone's attention. Because the tone of her message wasn't playful, and it definitely wasn't gossip. It sounded like someone who has watched this exact kind of situation explode before, and doesn't want to see it happen again. In her message, Tia made it very clear that artists chasing attention by going after 50 Cent might be making a huge mistake. According to her, the biggest misunderstanding people have right now is thinking that 50 still operates like a regular rapper. But that era is long gone. She pointed out something many industry insiders have quietly said for years. Music may have introduced the world to 50 Cent, but it's not the thing driving him anymore. These days he's focused on a completely different playing field: television production, film deals, and massive business ventures. In other words, the kind of power that doesn't rely on rap battles or chart numbers. And that difference matters. Because when someone at that level gets dragged into drama, the consequences can look very different from a typical hip-hop feud. It's not just about diss tracks or social media arguments anymore. It can turn into something much bigger, much faster. That's why Tia's warning sounded so serious. She basically said that many artists only start mentioning 50 when they have something to promote. A new single, a new album, or a project that needs attention. The formula is simple: throw a jab at 50 Cent, and the internet will immediately start talking. And honestly, history shows she might not be wrong. For years, 50 Cent has been one of the most talked about figures in hip-hop, not just because of his music, but because of his ability to dominate headlines whenever conflict appears. From social media trolling to public feuds, he's built a reputation as someone who never backs down from a fight. In fact, some people would argue he actually thrives in those situations. That's why Tia described him with a word that immediately got people reacting online. She called him a villain. Not in the comic book sense, but in the sense that he plays the role better than almost anyone else in the entertainment industry. According to her, 50 has mastered the art of waiting for the right moment to strike. And that's what makes this whole situation feel unpredictable. Because while everyone online might think the drama is happening right now, the real response could come later, when people least expect it. Tia hinted at that exact possibility. She explained that sometimes when people think the situation is over and the attention has moved on, that's when 50 suddenly comes back and reignites everything. That strategic timing is one of the reasons he's been able to stay relevant for decades. So from her perspective, constantly poking at someone like that is playing with fire. Meanwhile, another layer of the story started gaining traction once interviews with 50 Cent began circulating again online. In those clips, 50 addressed one of the accusations that critics have tried to use against him for years, claims about him cooperating with authorities during past legal situations. It's a rumor that has followed him around the industry for a long time, and younger artists sometimes repeat it without fully understanding the background. But 50 pushed back on that narrative strongly. He pointed out that people keep repeating the word snitch, yet they rarely provide clear evidence of who he supposedly informed on. According to him, the story has been twisted and exaggerated over time, often by people trying to damage his reputation. And that explanation added another layer to the debate online. Some fans believe 50's version of events and say the rumors have been blown out of proportion for years. Others remain skeptical and think the controversy will always follow him. But regardless of which side people believe, the conversation itself proves something important. Mentioning 50 Cent almost always creates attention. Which brings the focus back to King Harris. Because many observers are now wondering whether his recent comments are part of a bigger strategy. Is he simply speaking his mind? Or is he stepping into a public feud that could spiral far beyond what he expects? For a young artist trying to build his own identity, the temptation to challenge a major figure can be powerful. It instantly gets people talking, debating, and choosing sides. But it also comes with risks. And according to Tia Kemp, those risks might be much bigger than King realizes. What makes her warning even more intriguing is the history behind it. Because Tia isn't just someone watching this drama from the outside. Over the years, there have been multiple moments where her name was connected to 50 Cent in different ways. Old interviews, photos, and industry stories show that their paths crossed during a time when hip-hop was filled with some of the most intense rivalries the genre had ever seen. Especially during the explosive era when Rick Ross and 50 Cent were publicly at war. Back then, the drama wasn't just limited to music. It spilled into personal lives, businesses, and relationships connected to both sides. And during that chaotic period, Tia Kemp's name surfaced more than once in conversations surrounding the conflict. That's why when she speaks about this situation today, people can't help but wonder if she's drawing from experience. Maybe she's simply trying to prevent a younger generation from repeating the same mistakes. Or maybe she understands exactly how far these situations can go once they start escalating. Either way, her message has definitely changed the tone of the conversation. Instead of the internet treating the situation like entertainment, people are now asking a different question entirely. Is this just another celebrity feud building momentum online, or is this the beginning of something much bigger? And if 50 Cent decides to respond publicly, history suggests that things could escalate in ways no one involved is fully prepared for. Because one thing about 50 has always been consistent. When he finally decides to step into the conversation, he rarely does it quietly. Because the moment people started wondering whether 50 Cent would respond, another name suddenly entered the conversation. And that name immediately made the situation even more complicated. Rick Ross. Now, for anyone who has followed hip-hop for the past decade and a half, hearing Rick Ross connected to a story involving 50 Cent is enough to make people pause. Their rivalry wasn't just another rap feud. At one point, it was one of the most explosive conflicts the industry had ever seen. And the internet definitely hasn't forgotten that history. The moment Tia Kemp stepped in with her warning about King Harris pushing things too far with 50, Fans immediately started looking back at that chaotic era when Ross and 50 were constantly going at each other in public. Back then, it felt like every week something new was happening. Diss records, interviews, social media attacks, and personal accusations flying from both sides. It wasn't just about music anymore. It had become a full-blown war for dominance and respect. And right in the middle of that storm, Tia Kemp's name surfaced more than once. At the time, she was widely known as someone close to Rick Ross, which meant that whenever tensions between Ross and 50 Cent reached new levels, people started paying attention to anything connected to their personal lives. That's why her current warning feels so interesting. Because when someone who once stood on the Ross side of that rivalry suddenly tells people not to provoke 50 Cent, it makes fans wonder if she's speaking from experience. And according to many observers online, that might actually be the case. During the peak of the Ross versus 50 conflict, the internet saw just how strategic and relentless 50 could be when he decided to focus on someone. He didn't just respond with music. He used interviews, viral videos, and even unexpected business moves to keep the pressure on his opponents. That approach created headlines for months. So when Tia says people should be careful about provoking him, it doesn't sound like casual advice. It sounds like someone remembering exactly how intense those moments became. Meanwhile, the younger generation watching this drama unfold online might not fully understand how deep those old rivalries ran. For King Harris, this situation might simply feel like another internet debate, a chance to defend his father's legacy or respond to critics. But for people who lived through those earlier battles, the situation looks very different. They remember how quickly things escalated the last time major names in hip-hop started trading public attacks. And that's where another layer of speculation started appearing online. Some fans believe Tia Kemp's warning wasn't just about protecting King from embarrassment or backlash. They think she might actually be trying to prevent a situation that could spiral into a larger industry conflict. Because once a name like 50 Cent becomes actively involved in a feud, the conversation rarely stays limited to just two people. Suddenly, old rivals appear. Old interviews resurface. And the internet starts digging through years of history looking for connections. Which is exactly what started happening again. Clips from the Ross and 50 Cent era began trending across social media platforms. Fans revisited moments when both sides exchanged public insults, leaked information, and tried to outmaneuver each other in front of millions of viewers. For people who experienced that era in real time, it was like watching a time capsule reopen. And now the possibility of that kind of energy returning has people watching the current situation even more closely. At the same time, Tia Kemp has been making it clear that her intention isn't to restart old beef. If anything, her message sounded like someone trying to calm things down before they reached that level again. She emphasized that many artists misunderstand how 50 Cent operates today. According to her, he's not the same person who once focused purely on rap battles and chart positions. Over the past several years, he's transformed himself into a powerful entertainment executive with major influence in television and film. That shift has changed the dynamics of conflict. When someone with that level of influence decides to respond to criticism, it can ripple through multiple industries at once. Media coverage grows bigger, business relationships get involved, and the spotlight becomes impossible to ignore. And that's exactly why Tia keeps repeating one key idea. Some battles just aren't worth starting. Especially when the person on the other side has decades of experience navigating controversy. Meanwhile, the public reaction to all of this has been divided. Some fans believe King Harris has every right to defend himself and his family if he feels they're being disrespected. In hip-hop culture, standing your ground has always been an important part of earning respect. But others think he might be underestimating how complicated these industry dynamics can become. Because when legendary figures like 50 Cent get involved in public conflict, they often have years of strategy and experience behind them. And according to many longtime observers, that strategic mindset is exactly what makes 50 so difficult to challenge. He rarely rushes into responses. Instead, he waits, watches, and calculates the moment that will create the biggest impact. which means that sometimes the quiet periods are actually the most dangerous. Because while everyone else assumes the drama has ended, he might just be preparing the next move. That possibility is exactly what has people wondering how this situation will evolve over the next few weeks. Will King Harris continue pushing the conversation further? Will 50 Cent eventually step in and respond directly? And perhaps most interesting of all, where does Rick Ross stand in all of this now? Because if Ross decides to publicly weigh in on the situation, it could instantly transform a simple internet debate into something much larger. After all, history has already shown that whenever Ross and 50 appear in the same storyline, the drama rarely stays quiet for long. And that brings the entire conversation back to the question everyone online is starting to ask. Was Tia Kemp simply offering friendly advice to a younger artist trying to make a name for himself? Or was she quietly warning everyone involved that they might be opening the door to a level of chaos they aren't prepared for? Because if the past has taught the hip-hop world anything, it's this. When 50 Cent decides the time is right to respond, the entire internet usually feels the impact. And that's exactly where things start getting even more interesting. Because while the internet has been busy debating whether Tia Kemp was simply giving advice or quietly sending a warning, another question has been growing louder across social media. Where does Rick Ross stand in all of this? For years, Ross and 50 Cent represented one of the most intense rivalries hip-hop has ever witnessed. Their conflict wasn't just limited to music. It spilled into interviews, business moves, viral moments, and personal jabs that kept fans talking for years. So naturally, when Tia Kemp, someone closely connected to Ross's past, stepped forward with a message that sounded almost protective of 50 Cent, the internet immediately started raising eyebrows. Some fans believe her message shows maturity. Others think it reveals something deeper. Because if you listen carefully to what she said, her tone didn't sound like someone trying to attack anyone. Instead, it sounded like someone who had already seen what happens when a situation like this spirals out of control. And that perspective might come from experience. Back during the peak of the Ross and 50 Cent feud, the internet saw just how personal things could become. Every move was calculated. Every response was strategic. Every comment had the potential to trigger another wave of headlines. That's the kind of environment that can turn a simple disagreement into a long-running battle. And that's exactly what King Harris might be stepping into right now. For King, speaking out against 50 might feel like standing up for his family or defending his own reputation. In hip-hop culture, that kind of confidence can earn respect from fans. But at the same time, some observers believe the situation might be bigger than he realizes. Because the person on the other side of this conversation isn't just another rapper looking for attention. 50 Cent has spent decades mastering the art of public conflict. He understands timing. He understands media attention. And perhaps most importantly, he understands how to control a narrative once the spotlight turns his way. That's why some people believe the most dangerous moment in this entire story hasn't happened yet. Right now, everything still feels like online conversation, interviews, reactions, comments spreading across social media. But if 50 Cent decides to personally respond to King Harris, the entire tone of the situation could change overnight. History shows that when 50 steps into a public feud, he rarely holds back. And that's the exact possibility that seems to be sitting quietly in the background of Tia Kemp's warning. Another reason her message caught attention is because of the resurfacing history between her and 50 Cent. Old interviews, photos, and stories circulating online suggest their paths crossed multiple times during some of the most chaotic years in hip-hop. Some people even claim that 50 once showed support for projects connected to her, although many of those stories remain debated among fans. Still, the timing of those old clips reappearing right now has added even more mystery to the situation. Because when the internet starts rediscovering old connections, speculation spreads quickly. Suddenly people start asking questions. Was Tia Kemp always closer to 50's circle than people realized? Or is she simply someone who understands the kind of pressure that comes with being caught in the middle of these high-profile conflicts? At this point, the truth might be somewhere in between. What we do know is that the entire situation has captured the attention of hip-hop fans across social media. Every new comment, every new reaction, and every resurfaced clip adds another layer to the conversation. Some fans are supporting King Harris, saying he has every right to defend himself and his family. Others believe Tia Kemp might actually be doing him a favor by telling him to slow things down before they escalate. And then there are those watching closely to see whether Rick Ross will eventually break his silence and reveal where he stands. Because if Ross decides to weigh in publicly, the situation could instantly grow into something much larger than a simple internet dispute. At the end of the day, this story highlights something that has always been true about hip-hop culture. Respect matters. Reputation matters. And sometimes a single comment can spark a chain reaction that nobody originally planned. Right now, the tension is still building. Nobody knows whether the situation will quietly fade away or explode into another major industry feud. But one thing is certain. The moment 50 Cent decides to step into the conversation directly, the entire internet will be watching. And when that happens, things could get very interesting. Now I want to hear from you. Do you think Tia Kemp was genuinely trying to protect King Harris from making a huge mistake? Or do you believe there's more to her connection with 50 Cent than people realize? Drop your thoughts in the comments below, because this story might just be getting started.